Hello, hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mawusi Ragland, known as WuRag, and I have with us today a special guest. Her name is Imani Williams. I want to say Mrs. so bad. She's a queen. So it's Imani
Yeah.
Williams, and she's here with us to tell us all about her surviving childhood abuse. This is a very special topic. It's a serious topic. A topic that I really like to indulge in because we need to stop the abuse and stop the violence and spread the word as much as we possibly can. So I want to welcome you, Mrs. Imani Williams. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hi.
Hi, Queen. Thank you so much for the invite. Thank you.
You are welcome, and thank you so much on receiving it and showing up today because
Yes.
without you here, it's not possible. And so we make all things possible when people show up and they
Yes.
can share their story with the world. It takes a lot to speak up and speak out. So I want to thank you most and foremost.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So tell us, how was your childhood?
My childhood was it was overall it was good. There were some aspects though that did cause, grave concern and that showed up later on in adulthood, the fallout from that because I had not dealt with it properly.
Right.
Mhm.
So tell us, what would you like for the audience to know about your story?
Um, as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, my perpetrator was my paternal grandfather. Um, as a survivor, I want people to know that you do not have to live with that shame. It is not yours to own. Um, a kid, I don't care how much society um, over sexualizes, particularly Black girls, that this is not your fault and that you don't have to own any of that. But what you do have to do is move past the shame, move past any guilt that you're holding around that situation and live your life. Like forgiving yourself for, holding you back because this is not your fault.
Yes.
That's what I want to leave people with. If they take nothing else, is that self-forgiveness and self-love are key,
Okay.
and that you can get to this side of it.
You sure can. So share with us
Yes.
about your story.
Um, my paternal grandparents, I'm from Detroit, Michigan. Although I live in Las Vegas right now. I'm from Detroit, and my paternal grandparents were from Chattanooga, Tennessee. So I didn't have to see them often at all. But um, somewhere I'm going to wager 5, but I'm not sure when things started. But this is where this is where my memory was activated.
Yes.
And I told my mother when I was 6 that my grandfather had touched me down there. And we'd had very specific conversations like, nobody is to touch you without your permission. Nobody should be washing you up except me.
Yes.
We'd had all these conversations. And what he did, and I understand that people sometimes make a difference between um, what the abuse was or what it entailed. He never penetrated me with his penis, but what he liked to do was put his hands in my panties, and it hurt.
Right.
Um,
It wasn't right.
it wasn't right, and he always did it when, of course, nobody else was around. He was quick with it. And one thing that I always remembered was his scent, and that is something that is very common with survivors, is that you'll tap into a specific something about your perpetrator, and it'll trigger you. You know what I mean? It could be a inanimate object. It might be a scent. Um, it could be anything. For me, it was his scent was just so specific
Right.
that it could just trigger me really quickly.
Right, like the smells of our childhood. It's certain smells
Yes,
that
yes,
remind you of certain.
exactly.
Right. So go ahead.
So I told my mother, and when my daddy got home that evening, they went into their bedroom, and when their door opened, his suitcase was out, and he was on a flight to Chattanooga the next morning. I don't know what happened with that. I was just told when daddy returned that I would never have to be alone with my grandfather again. And I believe that parents do the best they can with the tools that they have. And I let it go for a number of years until I turned 12 and my grandfather passed. And my parents decided that I needed to go to his funeral. Trigger, no, I don't. But I'm 12, so and in the 70s, I'm a 70s kid. You did as you were told.
Right.
I said, okay. So we're in the station wagon, me, my aunt, my uncle, my dad, my cousins, my sibling, and they're just revering this man for 10 hours from Detroit to Chattanooga. It's a straight shot out I-75.
Right.
Um, and I'm thinking, no, he wasn't a good person. He was a creepy fucking rapist.
Yeah.
No. And so something switched on for me inside of me, like with that trip, with that car ride. We got to Chattanooga. I smelled him when as soon as the door opened, everybody else is laughing. They glad we're out of the car.
Right.
We've been riding for a long time, you know, and my senses are going into overdrive. I mean, I'm smelling him. I'm like, how am I gonna get through this? And I showed my ass while we were in Chattanooga because I didn't have the words to say I should not be here. Um, he did not go to jail. No charges were pressed.
Oh,
Um, but I do know that with that trip, my self-esteem plummeted, and I began to think I must be the bad person. At 12, that's what my mind told me,
oh
you
no.
know.
Right.
So I internalized all of that. And I'm reading the obituary, and I'm reading it. He has another kid. I'm like, how many more skeletons, are in our family that are just like tumbling out? And I showed my ass really bad. I was very selfish. I was on planet me. And I remember specifically developing this really fast crush on my grandmother's next door neighbor. It was two young men and they lived in this house. Wasn't no parents there. I guess them to be in their early 20s. And I said, I'm getting over there. And my father called my tea and he went over and knocked on that young man's door and he said, my daughter, under no circumstances is to cross. It's to even be in your lawn, on your lawn. He was letting him know because I was acting out.
Right. So
And
how did it affect your self-esteem?
which part?
Well, you felt that it wasn't taken care of. You felt that why didn't anything happen? You felt looked over.
Right. I felt less than. I felt like
And you were and
he
you were
they pumping him up and
right. And you
he's a
started
chested the
acting out.
molester.
Right.
Right.
This was a traumatic experience for you.
Yes.
So
Yes.
at 12 years of age.
That's where the switch just flipped off and my self-esteem plummeted and the fallout from that um as a teenager was promiscuity.
Yeah.
Um
At a young age,
as
correct?
at pretty young. I By the time I was 13, my parents had divorced, but they stayed. I mean, my mother was on me, baby, and she needed to be because I was out of control.
Right.
She needed to be. Um, so I called a family meeting and with my parents, I said, Daddy, you need to come over. I need to talk you and Mama together. And I presented a case at 13 of asking for birth control pills. Nobody ever explained to me that if you are touched early, it's going to awaken things prematurely. So,
People
where girls might have been, talking about somebody was cute, I was on a whole nother page. I was at the corner store that sold, X-rated books.
Yeah.
trying to figure out how I could get a paperback out of there because I was just curious. I needed to know, and I wanted
You
to
were
know on my
groomed at a
terms.
young age.
Right. I wanted to know on my terms.
Yes.
So I asked for birth control pills and was turned down by both of them. Um
Did they
Daddy
ask
said
why did you ask to be on birth control? Were they
yeah, they
concerned?
did. I told him I was ready. And Daddy said, you absolutely are not. He said there's a lot more that comes with having sex than getting possibly getting pregnant.
Well, how did you defend
You're
yourself on that?
I just told him I was ready. Nobody ever told me, like I said, that I was going to experience these feelings earlier than girls my age because I had been touched.
Yeah, they ignored it.
They did not do enough. I will say that I
Probably
think
because
that
they
if
didn't
they
want to
had
deal with that.
known more, perhaps, like they did put me in therapy when they got the divorce, but she was young. She must have been fresh out of school, very by the book. She was Black. I remember her name, Dr. Pearson. Dr. Pearson ain't asked none of the right questions, not none
Right.
at all. If
Because
she
they
had,
were thinking that I think that your parents were thinking you needed counseling because of the divorce, but not because of the
mm-hmm,
problem that was
yeah,
at hand that
yeah,
they overlooked and ignored. Because I don't felt that I feel, and you do too as well. They weren't educated enough on that end,
right.
and they
They weren't, and my mother was so protective, like it brought up a whole lot of things for me because mental health issues exist on both sides of my family. My
yeah,
my dad was brilliant, but he lived with bipolar disorder. I understand at 58 in 2022 better what that must how difficult that must have been in the 70s for a Black man. You know,
right.
both my parents were educators, but and they did very well with other people's kids. That's why I was like, why are they tripping? Because I'm asking for birth control pills. I'm asking. I'm letting them know before I get out here. I'm trying to be safe. Why? I said they handle all these other kids' problems wonderfully. Why are they tripping on me? You know? So I was told no, go read some more books by my dad, and I did. I babysat for somebody, and they had the whole Donald Goines collection. I read Horse Son that summer, Black Mama Widow, all the whole Donald Goines series. So Donald Goines was he was a pimp from Detroit.
Right.
So I'm reading all this. And I'm still getting more and more curious, but I decided to wait, and I waited a year and chose who I wanted to be my
How were you
first.
at this age?
14.
14. Now let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
At 14, so you went ahead and indulged at a young age at 14. As you
Mm-hmm.
got
Should
older,
have had a V8. Huh? I said I should have had a
do you
V8.
want to talk about when you turned 14, or do you want to, or do, because you did go into that situation,
Mm-hmm.
and because it affected you at a very young age, you were groomed, you were touched. In your teenage years, you were curious, so you went ahead and
Mm-hmm.
you experienced that. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that you thought it was wrong because it was
I
happening
didn't.
at such a young age. I think a lot of young girls
I
are facing
didn't.
that today, and it's
Um,
not talked about. As an adult, what happened? Did the same behaviors carry out? What was life like for you?
um, it absolutely, it absolutely carried out. Um, as a college freshman, I left somebody at home, and then I got a boyfriend on campus. Consequently, I contacted herpes. Don't know which one, who gave it to who, what. Don't know to this day. But
Right,
I do know that that was very traumatic in 1982 because that is the exact year that Eddie Murphy came out with Raw, and he made the standing joke about herpes being like luggage. You never get rid of that shit. And so, in 2022, it's still true. Um, that was also a game changer because then it became my responsibility to inform anybody that I was going to be intimate with moving forward that I was a carrier.
right.
And Black people, you know, we have a major problem talking about good sexual health.
Well, you weren't
But-
educated on it. You didn't know?
Right, but I'm talking about now in 2023, we
Now,
still
yes.
don't want to talk about.
Now,
We
yes.
still
People don't talk
we got
about
to be
this.
so much better.
But you're here.
One in every 4 persons is a herpes carrier.
Yes.
One in every 4. So we need to be talking about it.
Yes.
You
I
know,
agree. Yes.
and we don't. And the stigma behind herpes is horrific. Like even with the numbers and the statistics being what they are, people would rather say, in some cases, because I've heard it said,
Okay.
I'd rather have HIV. It's all this ignorance around,
Really?
sex and say yes. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there used to be the kids in the trans community who would go to these parties where everybody was infected, or a lot of people there were known to be infected, and they would intentionally have sex with these people so that they could get the social services.
What?
It's absolutely crazy. So they could get housing, get a Section 8 voucher, and particularly like places like California, where rent is absolutely, it's been insane. A Section 8 voucher goes a long way. So you have people intentionally
Because they have HIV? Is that what you're saying?
they wanted to get HIV so they could get the social services. They could
Get
they could get the benefit. Yes.
Oh no.
Yes. So and that's 20 years ago.
I don't
I
think
don't
that anyone should discriminate against anything. We need to educate
we
so
need to
that it can
educate.
stop, so that the spreading of anything can stop.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that's where it's I feel that that's where a lot of people get caught up with this whole thing, is that they're not educated on it, or if they are, they're overlooking it.
Right.
And people do take situations and use it at their advantage, but
Mhm.
having anything is not worth it if you have education about it. But a lot of people aren't educated on it because it's not talked about.
Right.
And it starts really at home. I don't think enough parents are talking about it. A lot of things
No,
are
yeah,
overlooked, and that's why we have
right. That's the key right there. A lot of things are overlooked, and we really cannot afford it. So I think about the
how does
young
it
for
affect your life?
um again, I had to be forthcoming with people moving forward. I had to let them know, give them the opportunity to decide for themselves. That took a lot of maturity.
Yes.
Um, but I certainly I've had a lot of people over the last 30 years confide in me. People who are married, people who aspired to be married and wondered how this was going to affect them. Um, I am very holistic, so I don't do pills. I don't do the pills where you got to do a daily regimen for the rest of your life. I find it better to keep my stress reduced. Um, and I know when I do have high stress, I run the risk of having an outbreak. And I also inherited from my father and my grandma and his mama, my grandmother, hemorrhoids. So I try to keep everything asleep. I try to keep my stress levels in check. And try to move as healthy as possible.
Yes.
And
Educational. Pay attention.
watch what I, really
It's
watch
not
what
a
I
death
eat.
sentence.
It's
Not
not
a
it's
death.
not a
No.
death sentence, but at 18,
It felt like it was.
I believed it was.
Absolutely.
My parents were the first people that I called, and my daddy was ready to get in the car and get on the highway and come to my college dorm. I said no. I said I got to deal with it. I called my mother, and she said, "Well, are you kidding? It's not fatal, is it?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, you're going to be okay." My mother didn't. She was not a. Um, she was not a. She didn't believe in a whole bunch of tears. What are you going to do to deal with it, and how you going to move forward? And you have to know that you're going to be okay.
Right.
My parents were my the first people I told. I didn't want my roommate to know. I didn't want the pharmacy calling me. It was 1982. I mean, that's
You don't
like
look a day
I
like
had I hadn't even looked. I still thought I was straight then.
Well, you look like you're only in your 30s now, so I know
I'm
you.
58 now, so this
My
is
good look
a
at
long
you.
time coming, and it was a source of shame for a long time because nobody wants to be rejected.
Right.
And I can say, as a bi attracted woman, that I have never had a man say that he's had it. But I know that they do. And so with that, I
They
want
say that
sisters.
more women it's easy for a woman to pass it than by a man. It's a harder risk. That's what it's said. That it's harder for a man to contract it to a woman, but if a woman on woman, it's easier that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, either way, 1 in 4, 1 in 4. And so young sisters, older sisters, whoever is out here that is sexually active needs to be having that conversation around
Men,
STDs. And y'all need to go get tested together. And if they can't wait
yes.
for the damn 20-minute swab to come, be read.
And that's for every
Right,
HIV,
right.
AIDS. That's what I used to do. And I used to go, oh, I'm going to go get tested because I never wanted to contract something and then
Mm-hmm.
pass it to someone I felt no. And I don't want somebody doing me that way.
Right,
So
right.
that's taking, you're holding yourself accountable. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And,
Very
and
important.
because somebody gave it to you. And it's because that person didn't make sure that they were okay and that they were open to tell you and have you say, well, oh, okay, let me make that choice. That's
Right,
why diseases
right,
spread because they're not
right.
open. So this is where we're open about it and educating people on what is right. I think
Absolutely.
most people,
Absolutely.
why
I
isn't it?
delivered 2 children. There's
Yes,
a lot of
show them
concern
a
around
long
if
life.
you have herpes, you can't safely deliver a child. You absolutely can. That does mean that you need to talk to your doctor and make sure that your OB knows your history and be honest, because you don't want to unnecessarily bring a blind child into this world because you were ashamed to say something.
I
That's
know.
some selfish stuff.
Yes.
So openness, honesty, transparency, all these things that are supposed to go into that intimacy pot when we're about to give ourselves to somebody. Anyway, let's have the damn conversation.
Yes. And that's what I admire about you. Before we go into your what life is like for you today and your book, because she is a published author now. I admire that you've been open and honest since a child. That's amazing. Most children, I do this show for the children,
Mhm.
especially because every day is the child that is being murdered by an abuser, groomed and abused. And then a lot of times murdered because of it, and they're
Right,
not speaking up. You as a
right,
child, you spoke up. You were telling people. You didn't hold it a secret. And I give your parents credit because they did talk to you about, hey, if somebody touched you down there, you let us know that's
right,
wrong. And not only did
right.
they do that, you when it happened, we were praying that it didn't happen, but it happened and you went and told. Now, a lot of the
Mhm.
times the parents they overlook you still. And
Right,
that's something that we're trying to spread the word so that it's not overlooked, that you really look at that situation and deal with it because an abuser, a pedophile, that's a crime. That is
absolutely,
something that
absolutely.
right, that's
We have to stop. We have to stop protecting, the uncles, the aunties, because there are women abusers as well.
the sisters, yes,
The
all that.
sisters,
Yes,
the brothers, the cousins. We just
the
did
neighbors.
that holiday thing, the neighbor, and adults be in one room and kids be segregated in the bedroom or in the basement. Damn it, put down the cards, put down the drinky drink, and go check on those babies.
Yes.
Somebody's innocence can be stolen just like that, just like that. And then they got to come around this person. So you're causing a continuation of trauma and PTSD that does not have to be. So yeah,
Well, let's talk about your book. That is beautiful.
yes.
Tell us the
Um,
title.
Root Work Triumph Over Trauma is a collection of short stories, poetry, and personal essays that started out from journaling, just getting my feelings out on paper. And if you're not journaling, I really encourage you to look into it. It is a positive way to work through your feelings and process. Um, you know what I mean?
And
Because
start your
ultimately,
book.
and start your book. Ultimately, we can turn to social media. I'm in a lot of groups, and they started posting anonymously now. So the questions and what they're seeking is getting deeper and deeper. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But at the end of the day, you got to turn it inward and be willing to tell your story. And our stories absolutely matter. So it's root work is 134 pages. Again, just chock full of everything. I'm doing a workshop later
Show us the
today.
cover, please.
This is the cover. And
Ooh.
this is the back cover. That's me on the back. It's available at CimaniWilliams.com. If you like a signed hardcover, they're $26. They're also available on Amazon in print and ebook, and on Audible. If you have some free Audible credits laying around, you use 2 of those and you can download it for no charge. They also have a 30-day trial going on right now, free trial. But yes, that book is my baby. I'm saying it all. I'm talking with you right now, and I'm
Yes,
about to go
talk to
talk
me.
with some sisters in
Yeah,
recovery for sexual assault
yes,
at home as a paid speaker. I'm just over the top right now because I believe that root work is that we do our work is so important. I came through that childhood sexual abuse. I came through alcoholism. I'm in my 18th year of sobriety from alcohol. I'm in my 11th year of intentional celibacy. I've been married 3 times, twice to a man, once to a woman. I'm a grandmother of 5 and 1 angel grandbaby. I am blessed. And there is so much to feeling again and living again and being able to enjoy R&B music, something I couldn't do for years after my last divorce. But through these 11 years, since that, I'm good and I'm growing. And I want to share that as a holistic creative arts wellness life coach. Workshops, one-on-one sessions, group sessions. It's about the healing and trauma release. And I thank you so much, my sister, for having me on today.
absolutely. So, what is your message for survivors?
Keep your eye on the prize and love yourself first. No matter what they say, love yourself first.
Yes, yes. Just because you went through it, you don't have to continuously go through the storm.
Right,
Reach back and
right.
help others and move on with your life because your
And
life is
move
for you.
on.
Yes,
God has a plan for all of us. And I'm telling you, if you do your part, the creator and the universe will do theirs.
absolutely.
Step into your light.
Yes. So, how can the people contact you?
All across social media, all platforms, see Imani Williams. And then my website is seeimaniwilliams.com.
Thank you.
Thank
You want to
you.
share anything else before we wrap it up?
To those of you in the struggle, not sure just where to turn, listen, there are resources out here. Use them. If you are in an abusive situation, you owe it to yourself. And if you have babies, to get out.
Yes, that's
All
most
right.
importantly because if
Yes.
it follows and it is a crime, you are not to be
It,
isolated from
yes.
no one or nothing, your friends, your family. Do not feel ashamed. Don't feel afraid. Don't feel alone. Get out,
Come on. Get
help,
out. And
get out.
sisters, we got to do a little bit more, and we can do more to be a service to sisters when they are in crisis. Now, it's always taking a village, and it always is. And we as sisters, as Black women, as Black and brown women, we're the link to survival so often. So be a service when you can. If you can't offer nothing but prayer and a kind word, do that. Do that so folks know that they're not alone out here.
Yes,
Perpetrators love for you to think you alone and nobody cares about you. I love you.
Absolutely. You have heard it from the queen. See, Imani Williams. Yes. We have a
Yay.
number for you. It's domestic violence hotline is 1-800-799-SAFE. 1-800-799-7233. Please call. You can text them quietly. It's anonymously done. Please call. We don't want you to feel alone. It stops today. Go and live the rest of your life and be free. I want to leave you with a poem by Douglas Maylock. It's called It's Fine Today. Sure, this world is full of trouble. I ain't said it ain't. Lord knows I've had enough and double reason for complaint. Rain and storm have come to fret me. Skies are often gray. Thorns and brambles have come to beset me on the road. But say, ain't it fine today? What's the use in always weeping, making trouble last? What's the use in always keeping thinking of the past? Each must have his tribulations, water with his wine. Life, it ain't no celebration trouble. I've had mine, but today is fine. It's today that I'm living, not a month ago. Having, losing, taking, giving. As time wills it so. Yesterday, a cloud of sorrow fell across the way. It may rain again tomorrow. It may rain, but say, ain't it fine today? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us with Mrs. C. Imani Williams, the Queen. Please contact her, look her up, buy her book, and
Yes.
she is also available for virtual speaking engagements. So thank you
Yes.
so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you,
Enjoy.
Queen. All righty.
Let's see here.